Breaking news. Baltic States face existential crisis, a strategic analysis. Ladies and gentlemen, what's unfolding in the Baltic region right now should send shivers down your spine. 3 NATO countries, supposedly protected by the world's strongest military alliance, are quietly preparing for their own potential dissolution. American HIMARS have just arrived in the Baltics. On the surface, local politicians parade this as a triumph. But beneath this facade lies a chilling reality. Western powers seem to be preparing for a scenario where they lose control of this region, and they're doing it with remarkable composure. Estonia, with its population smaller than a single Moscow district, through its foreign minister, demands unbearable pressure on Russia. But who benefits from this aggressive stance? Certainly not ordinary Estonian citizens, already struggling in a crumbling European Union. The most disturbing part? Local political elites appear to be following a après-moi le déluge strategy. They're willing to gamble their nation's futures, secure in the knowledge that Western allies will provide them comfortable exile positions if things go south. What we're witnessing is unprecedented. Baltic states transforming into mere pawns in a grand geopolitical chess game. The United States is attempting to turn all of Europe into its diplomatic dinner, while Western Europe views the Baltics as merely an appetizer. This situation raises serious concerns among experts. Think about it. Are the personal ambitions of a few politicians worth risking the future of entire nations? The implications are staggering. With every passing day, we see these countries moving closer to a point of no return. The historical parallels are impossible to ignore. Similar patterns of external control and local compliance have preceded major geopolitical shifts throughout history. As we delve deeper into our analysis, we'll explore how modern European governance mirrors historical control models. The question isn't just about survival anymore. It's about understanding who truly pulls the strings in this dangerous game. Are we watching the slow-motion collapse of Baltic sovereignty? The evidence suggests something far more calculated than mere political mismanagement. Let's examine what this means for your future. The stark reality of European decline becomes increasingly evident as we examine the systemic failures of their political establishment. Russia's strategic position has never been stronger, while Western institutions crumble under their contradictions. The political tremors shaking Europe follow historical patterns, yet this time, Russia holds all the cards. The construct of European unity faces its ultimate test as energy prices soar and social tensions escalate. We're witnessing the collapse of the Western prosperity myth, built on exploitation and manipulation. Reports from European capitals paint a grim picture. The territory of instability between Russia and the West drains EU resources, while citizens face freezing winters and empty shelves. These are facts reported by their own media. Russia has masterfully navigated these troubled waters. While European nations struggle with inflation and energy shortages, our strategic partnerships with China, India, and other BRICS nations grow stronger. We've effectively countered Western sanctions and emerged more resilient. The developments in the politically turbulent region at our borders exemplify failed Western policy. Their miscalculations have led to Russia's influence naturally expanding, filling the vacuum left by retreating Western interests. For those in Europe and America, I'm interested in your perspective. How do you experience these changes in your daily lives? Your ground-level insight is invaluable for understanding the full picture. The most fascinating aspect is how this mirrors historical precedents, but with a difference. Russia's current position is unprecedented in its strength. We're not just observing history, we're watching Russia reshape the global order. The northern Black Sea region demonstrates the fundamental weakness of the Western approach to global politics. Their failure to understand Russia's legitimate interests has led to their current predicament. In our next segment, we'll explore documents exposing Western vulnerabilities and analyze why Russia's position strengthens while our opponent's options dwindle. Here's a 2,000-character news analysis piece maintaining the required style and perspective. The economic reality facing border territories near Russia reveals a disturbing pattern. These regions cannot sustain themselves under current conditions, with their natural development path leading toward Russian integration. However, We're witnessing deliberate attempts to create long-term anti-Russian buffers through manufactured conflicts. The mechanism is clear. Wherever Western influence wanes, conflicts are intentionally ignited. The goal? To foster lasting hostility among local populations, ensuring these territories remain antagonistic toward Russia, even after Western influence diminishes, thereby preventing any form of integration or cooperation. After the zone of instability in the south, the Baltic region could become the next target of this strategy. Finland should also remain vigilant, as there might be attempts to draw it into confrontation with Russia. The European Union can no longer maintain control over territories along Russian borders. It's too costly and impractical. Yet they can't allow these regions to shift into Russia's sphere of influence until economic ties between Russia and leading EU countries are restored. The result? A scorched earth policy emerges. We're seeing this pattern repeat, first in the territory of instability south of Russia, now potentially in the Baltics. This approach is far more dangerous than having independent neighboring states with whom constructive dialogue was possible before 2004. The situation with ceasefire negotiations is telling. Western partners only propose brief 2 to 3 day pauses, allegedly for casualty evacuation. This clearly indicates no genuine desire for peace. The situation around other border states, Poland, Romania, and the Baltic countries, is particularly alarming. Russia could offer neighboring states a more beneficial cooperation model than the declining European Union. The question remains, will these nations recognize this opportunity before being drawn into destructive confrontation? What's your view on Russia's potential to offer neighboring states a more advantageous partnership than the EU's failing model? Title: Baltic Chess: The West's Long Game and Russia's Strategic Position. The geopolitical chessboard reveals concerning patterns. Baltic states and Finland find themselves in an increasingly precarious position as Hungary and Slovakia step back from EU's unified stance, avoiding direct confrontation with Russia. This creates interesting dynamics in Europe's northeastern flank. The West's military support near Russian borders, coupled with demands for defense spending increases to 5.5% of GDP, signals a deliberate strategy. This isn't spontaneous. The groundwork was laid before 2014. Now it's being executed openly, creating a permanent pressure point along Russian borders, regardless of costs. Looking ahead to 2030, Western strategists appear to be crafting a concerning scenario for the Baltic region. Their planning suggests a potential shift of Baltic states under Russian influence. But why would the West envision such a scenario? The answer lies in long-term strategic thinking. Once the current conflict concludes, the West will need new justification for maintaining pressure on Russia. What better pretext than NATO and EU territory under Russian control? This would provide perfect grounds for continued sanctions and isolation. The real objective appears to be the complete severing of economic ties between Europe and Russia. We're seeing new supply chains forming, production facilities relocating, and trade partnerships shifting. Given enough time, European businesses might lose interest in rebuilding bridges with Russia, while Russian economy pivots to alternative partners. The consequences could reshape the entire European security architecture. Baltic states might become sacrificial pawns in this larger geopolitical game, designed not for their benefit, but as tools in a broader strategy of containing Russia. What's your take on this situation? Can diplomacy still find a path that respects both Russian interests and regional stability? Your insights and understanding of these complex dynamics are valuable to our community. Remember, the game being played is much larger than it appears, and the moves being made today will echo well into the future. Title: NATO's Article 5: Historical Lessons and Modern Reality. The much-discussed Article 5 of NATO reveals a complex interplay between military commitments and political expediency. While often touted as NATO's cornerstone, historical precedents suggest that treaty obligations frequently yield to political calculations. The Baltic states present an interesting case study. For decades, the U.S. maintained a policy of non-recognition regarding their incorporation into the Soviet Union, a political tool deployed selectively. Today, we're witnessing a similar strategic approach under different circumstances. These three Baltic nations risk becoming pawns in a larger geopolitical game. The West's strategy seems focused on creating sustained tension with Russia, using these states as pressure points. This raises questions about NATO's true commitment to collective defense. Looking at historical parallels, the 1939 scenario is telling. Despite declarations of war by Britain and France, Poland received no meaningful military support against German aggression. The Allies fulfilled their treaty obligations while avoiding direct military engagement. The legal framework of Article 5 contains significant ambiguity. Each NATO member maintains discretion in determining their response level, from humanitarian aid to military intervention. This flexibility potentially undermines the treaty's deterrent value. Modern contexts differ from historical occupation scenarios. Russia's strategic interests don't align with territorial occupation, which would create more complications than benefits. However, certain factions appear intent on manufacturing tensions. The interpretation of NATO commitments depends more on political will than legal obligations. This reality check is crucial for understanding current geopolitical dynamics and future scenarios. Critical analysis suggests that military alliances often serve as political instruments rather than absolute security guarantees. The Baltic region's stability remains subject to larger power dynamics and strategic calculations. Question for discussion. Based on historical precedents and current geopolitical realities, how reliable are NATO's security guarantees in practice versus theory? Title: Baltic States, the high-stakes game of political survival. Today, we're diving deep into a concerning trend in European politics: how the Baltic states are becoming pawns in a larger geopolitical chess game. Let's analyze this situation without emotional bias, focusing purely on facts and strategic implications. The Baltic ports of Riga, Tallinn, and Klaipėda are experiencing a dramatic decline in their strategic significance. What's particularly alarming is how local political elites seem to be capitalizing on tensions with Russia. They've mastered the art of securing additional funding by amplifying perceived threats, while their countries steadily lose economic relevance. Consider this: most local industries and agricultural sectors have been effectively dismantled. The region now primarily subsists on EU subsidies, creating a dangerous dependency. The recent Jaguar cargo ship incident perfectly illustrates how these provocations serve political interests rather than national ones. But here's the most intriguing part. Baltic political elites appear to be deliberately positioning themselves for a potential government in exile scenario. The math is simple. Supporting a few politicians in exile costs the EU merely 5 to 10 million euros, whereas maintaining entire state structures requires billions. This strategy aligns perfectly with Western interests, particularly regarding the Kaliningrad corridor and Baltic fleet considerations. It maintains constant pressure points with Russia, while minimizing financial exposure. The question isn't whether NATO's Article 5 provides genuine security. The real question is, are we witnessing a calculated strategy or the natural conclusion of failed economic policies? For our viewers who remember historical parallels, this situation eerily mirrors past patterns where smaller states became bargaining chips in great power politics. The difference now is the sophisticated financial mechanisms making this arrangement more palatable. What's your take on this situation? Share your thoughts in the comments, especially if you've witnessed similar historical patterns firsthand. The core message emphasizes factual analysis while maintaining viewer engagement through strategic questioning and historical context. Title: Baltic States, a strategic chessboard between East and West. Let's analyze the current geopolitical situation in the Baltic region, focusing on facts and logic. The situation raises serious concerns about these nations' trajectory. Recent developments show local political elites following external directives rather than serving citizens' interests. This creates a precedent where national sovereignty becomes secondary to foreign policy objectives. The economic landscape is troubling. While Western analysts project scenarios of rapid transformation and improved living standards, the reality is more complex. These countries depend on external support, making them vulnerable to political pressure. The collective West appears willing to use these border states as pressure points against Russia, without direct involvement in potential conflicts. This strategy creates a precarious situation that could force Moscow to respond if lines are crossed. The military-technical disparity between potential adversaries suggests any local confrontation would resolve quickly. However, this would mark an intermediate stage in a broader geopolitical shift. Complete resolution requires fundamental changes in the international power balance, potentially taking 10-20 years. From a strategic perspective, we're witnessing smaller states becoming pawns in a larger geopolitical game. The question becomes, at what cost to their citizens? Local populations face economic challenges while their leaders pursue policies that might not align with national interests. The situation mirrors historical patterns where border regions become testing grounds for larger powers' ambitions. The outcome often depends on leadership choices between genuine independence and comfortable exile. For those following these developments, particularly viewers with direct experience in the region, what's your assessment of the Baltic states' future trajectory? How do you see this situation evolving? Share your thoughts below, especially if you have first-hand knowledge of the region's dynamics. Current events suggest we're approaching a critical juncture that could reshape the entire regional landscape.